Morning everyone. Welcome to the webinar on Talent Shortage Trends 2014, Understanding the Challenges by Manpower Group. Today we are talking about a topic which I'm sure everyone is very eager to talk about and hear. At the time when businesses are extremely dynamic, the only thing that remains constant is talent. And for organizations to get the right talent has always been a big priority. So what happens when sourcing, engaging, and retaining the right talent becomes a challenge? To share a little bit more about Manpower Group today. Manpower Group is the world leader in innovation workforce solutions, connecting human potential to the power of business. Manpower Group serves both large and small organizations across all industry sectors through 4 major brands and offerings: the Manpower Group Solutions, Experis, Manpower, and Right Management. We operate a worldwide network of around 80 countries and regions. With global insights and local expertise, Manpower Group partners with its clients to accelerate their business. To talk about this topic today, we have 2 presenters with us who have great expertise in the business of talent management and career management. Mr. Srikanth Rangarajan manages business as an executive director and president for Manpower Group India, and is responsible for leading strategic and operational performance. Srikanth joined Manpower in 2008 and has held key positions in the organization since then. He was heading the borderless talent solutions for Asia Pac based out of Singapore, and subsequently moved on as country manager for Manpower Philippines. He is currently responsible for business growth and operations with an impeccable track record of managing businesses with a keen eye on ROI. His customer-driven focus has contributed in steering the company to its present market-leading performance. With over 23 years of rounded global perspective across industries like retail, telecom, and office automation, he is an early adapter of technology and value processes with a demonstrated thought leadership skill. We also have with us today Ms. Chaitali Mukherjee, Country Manager, Right Management India. Chaitali is a strategy and talent management expert, and in addition to being the country manager for Right Management India, also serves as the India region practice leader for the Talent Assessment Center of Excellence. Her work experience spans across the business and corporate strategy, individual team and organization assessments, HR strategy and design, organization design, and change management. She has worked extensively with Indian and global clients, particularly in the public sector, telecom domain, auto, and other industries. Prior to Right Management, Chaitali also worked with IBM Global Services, and prior to that also with Tata Consultancy Services. So what is it that we're going to talk about today in our webinar? We will have points shared with us on what the talent shortage survey is all about. What do the global, Asia Pacific, and India trends talk? And what is the current practices that organizations are adopting to address this talent shortage? With this, I would like to pass it over to Srikanth and Chaitali to start with the presentation.
Thank you, Tuhina. Hello all, good morning to you. My name is Srikanth Rangarajan. It's my pleasure and honor to be a part of this webinar. And it gives me immense pleasure to talk about what is talent shortage as a survey which we've done recently in 2014. I thank you all for taking your time in your busy schedule, coming in here and participating, and making this session very interactive is the key. So, moving on, I'm going to talk about what this talent shortage is all about. The factors of human age, macroeconomic forces changing the world. If you have to get into deeper level of understanding, it's the global readjustment, social bifurcation, talentism, and technological revolution. Today, in the global readjustment, it's about shift of an economic power, which changes the dynamics in the playing force of companies to look at their decisions about talent. Business models have to be redesigned, value propositions have to be redesigned, which has to have a reinvention in terms of the social systems. Going ahead with technological revolution, this technology has liberated the talented individual to undertake professional jobs anywhere in the world with an unfiltered exchange of ideas and innovation. The increased use of social media, growth in mobile usage, adapting to a new human approach in all markets are the key to technological revolution. Moving ahead with social bifurcation, individuals today are with high demand skills who are continued to be poached by rival firms. That's a big challenge for HR managers. That's the impact on the ability, and we're talking about talentism, which also talks about the global economic forces having strained existing models and systems. Today we're also talking about talentism as shifting of demographics, which is also causing talent shortages. Moving on to the next slide, in terms of the demographics, talent mismatch, and the talent mismatch, what it is illustrated here. What you're seeing here talks about the globe, which has a variety of demographic developments, which has led to a few people in the right age of skills at the right locations. With approximately 45 million new entrants in the global job market, most of them being young, there is a demand of 300 million new jobs which needs to be filled between now to 2015. Employers will also continue to look forward to new talents in the new markets. Next slide, please. What's this talent shortage all about? What does this survey talk about? Manpower Group's 9th annual talent shortage, which explains the world's ongoing talent shortage crisis. The survey nearly talks about 37,000 employees globally, across 42 countries and territories, reports difficulties in finding staff with the right skills. Next slide, please. Today, the employees have many questions, but one of the few which are key are: what's the difficulty in employees experiencing in the effort to fill the jobs? What are the most difficult jobs to fill? What impact does it have on the talent shortages? What impact does it have on the organization? And why are jobs so hard to fill? And what strategies are being pursued to overcome these difficulties? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. What we're talking about is the talent shortage trends of 2014 and what's the global view before we move on to APAC and the India view. So this is a graphical representation in terms of Manpower Group's 9th annual talent shortage survey. Manpower Group's 9th talent shortage survey reveals that global employers continue to be plagued with talent shortages. 36% of global employees are facing difficulty in filling jobs. This percentage has increased for the second consecutive year, and it's the highest since 2007. Globally, 47% of companies that are addressing talent shortages are doing so by adopting new people practices, including providing additional training and development to existing staffing. You would also note that 25% of respondents are searching for new talent sources, typically by recruiting from untapped or undertapped talent pools. Also note that 23% of respondents with talent shortages are preparing to adopt new alternate work models. What you're seeing here is a graphical representation of the 2014 talent shortage country-wise ranking. For the third consecutive year, employers in Japan report the highest level of talent shortage. Employers in Ireland and Spain, two countries that have borne the brunt of the Eurozone recession, also have endured consistently to have a weak labor markets, report that least difficulty in filling the jobs. Next slide, please. What we see as the biggest changes from 2013 to 2014. If you see, the Peruvian and the Colombian employers report the maximum difficulty in filling jobs from the year 2013, reporting a percentage increase of 39% to 27%. 64% of employers in India struggle to fill jobs as compared to 61% in 2013. This is an increase of about 3% compared to last year and the last survey. Next slide, please. Today we're talking about the top 10 jobs that employers have difficulty in filling. While there are many skill sets which can go on and on, in the interest of time, what is it which the main shortage which the employers feels today are the skilled trades, which includes bakers, chefs, electricians, carpenters, welders, and building and construction engineers. Today, global employers also report the biggest talent shortages in the skill, and engineers are the second in the list, in the third in a row. Moving up to third are technicians, productions operators, and people who are there in the maintenance roles. Sales representatives also have slipped to one place to fourth, and sales manager's position is also new to the top in the 10th year, placing in the 7th. Employers in India have the most difficulty in filling jobs in accounting, finance, IT, and the BFSI segment. Next slide, please. What are the trends of 2014 at an APAC level? What are we talking about? The proportion of employees reporting difficulty in filling jobs in APAC. If you see in the past 2 years, employers in Japan report the greatest talent shortages. More than 4 in 5 report difficulty in their attempts to fill jobs. Elsewhere, the most acute shortages are reported in Peru, India, Brazil, Turkey, and Argentina. Employers in Ireland, Spain, and Netherlands also report a least difficulty with the talent shortages. Proportion of employers having difficulty in filling jobs, it's just a graphical representation for us to show that 45% of APAC employers struggled to fill the positions in 2014, down from 51% in 2013. Next slide, please. The impact talent shortage has on meeting client needs. Today we're talking about employers reporting a talent shortage, which say that it's having a significant impact on their ability to meet client needs. This demonstrates that companies continue to see talent as a key driver to meet business objectives. The most common impact companies reported is a reduced ability to serve clients closely, to have reduced competitiveness and productivity. Also, to talk about the reasons, employees indicate they have difficulty in filling the jobs, and the challenges at an APAC level are lack of technical skills, and the most common reason being Asia-Pac employers are having difficulties in filling jobs which went up to 34% in 2014, up from 31% in 2013. 32% report problems caused by lack of soft skills, which is also an increase of 28% in 2013. Other reasons include a shortage of available applicants, lack of experience or employability skills, and misaligned candidate expectations. Yeah, over to you, Tuhina and Chaitali, to cover the talent shortage trends of 2014 as an India focus, please.
Thanks, Shrikant. Good morning, everyone. This is Chaitali this side, and it's a pleasure to speak to all this morning. Thanks, Shrikant, for sharing this very interesting data with all our participants about the global status as well as the APAC status. I'll just go back one slide to actually start from here at an APAC view. It's a very, very interesting data that Shrikant was taking us all through, which is about lack of technical competencies, lack of workplace competencies, which is basically hard skills and soft skills, being a very important factor that's impacting, fulfillment of open positions in APAC. The other one, which is again among the top three, is lack of available applicants. And when I compare it vis-a-vis 2013, we would realize that lack of available applicants has actually gone a little down. From 32%, it has come to 31%. But the lack of competencies per se has actually aggravated. This actually poses a very important point for all of us. And let's see how it plays down for us in India. Yeah. So this is the same graph that we were seeing a couple of minutes back, which had the global and APAC data, and now we have the India data plotted onto it. It's a very, very interesting data. So a case in point is, we could see that at 36% is where the global data is, at 45% is where the APAC data is, and look at the India data, which is sitting at 64%. So typically what we are saying almost 2/3 of employers in India are experiencing difficulty finding right staff with the right skills. If you compare it with the global average, it is definitely way higher and also higher than the APAC level. Another interesting point is, while at an APAC level, the data has actually gone down from 51 to 45%. In case of India, it has actually gone up from 61 to 64%. Thus, there is a significant factor for us, since, we are sitting in APAC, we are talking about the situation being not too great for APAC, but India is actually facing the heat real hard. And I think that's the key takeaway for all of us who are trying to handle talent shortage in India. I'm sure in most of the conversations that we have with a lot of our clients, the number one conversation that happens is, how do we handle it? So let's look at some of the current practices that organizations are trying to adapt to manage this talent shortage. As part of the survey, in addition to trying to understand where exactly is the talent shortage, what kind of skills are getting tougher to fill, the conversation was also about understanding what are the current practices that organizations are adopting to meet the talent shortage strategies. So the first question that was asked was, if the talent shortage is increasing day by day, year by year, what is the impact it is having on the organizations? And you can see the data at a global, APAC, and at an India level. Quite interestingly, you can see that while at a global and APAC level, the impact is on reduced ability to serve clients and, of course, reduced competitiveness and productivity. And that's quite understandable. It is hitting the business the hardest when it comes to meeting client needs, and it's also impacting my competitiveness, it's impacting my productivity. In India, Indian employers are seeing the impact of talent shortage in the form of reduced innovation, reduced creativity, and thereby reduced competitiveness and productivity. In an economy which is actually thriving on the back of large conglomerates, family-owned businesses, as well as MNCs who are trying to do different things, this is literally the DNA of growth. What does it do to employees who are actually there in the business? It can seriously impact the quality of output for organizations, since they would have limited talent inside the organization with the right capabilities. Thereby, the pressure on those employees will actually keep increasing. Thus, it's a double whammy situation, because I basically have employees now in my organization who are few than in comparison to what I want, and the expectation also from them is much higher. The other question that we had asked was, what strategies are employers pursuing to overcome these talent shortage difficulties? Again, a very, very important one, because it's important to understand, so if there is a talent shortage, what is it that the organizations are doing? So if you look at it, there was, of course, a sizable population, not sizable, I would say a small population across all the three sectors, globe, APAC, and India, which said, we are currently not doing anything, and I would say it's a dangerous situation to be in. But the interesting ones are the other three. If you look at it in India level, you will see, literally because the dirt is at a 64%, they are literally trying to do almost everything, right from starting alternative work models to exploring new talent sources, as well as adopting non-traditional people practices. So when we heard these three key words, implementing alternate workforce models, talent sources, and people practices, we try to understand a little deeper on what did each of these mean. The next few slides will actually tell us when they are saying implementing alternate work models, what did they exactly mean. So the first one, when it came to work models. So if you look at the heads under alternative work models, it was providing virtual work options to candidates. And you could see almost in most of them, India was trying to do much more than what others were actually trying to do. So providing virtual options to candidates was one of the things. Offering more flexible work arrangements was the other one, and you can see India is trying to do a lot of that. Integrating contingent workers in the process. I think again India is trying to do a lot of that. Redesigning current work procedures such as sharing work assignments between different employees, departments or bureaus. What we call as the communities for work is something that's getting created, and again India is doing a lot of it. If you look at what's happening at a global and APAC level, we are talking about increasing the focus on improving our talent pipeline, which is basically focusing on high potential development, building succession management approach, etc. Now the question would be, why is it so different? It's understandable. India is a highly growing economy where there is young talent. There's a huge supply of workforce. There isn't necessarily the right talent available to you at the right place. And hence, adopting alternate work models is actually helping us to get the best of what we have in hand. The next one was people practices. So we went ahead and asked, what is it that you all are trying to do when you say we are also looking at alternate people practices? So if you look at the examples, creating an interim role for talented individuals with in-demand skills, providing clear career development opportunities, redefining qualifying criteria. So basically spreading my net much further away so that what I'm able to get to be considered is much more. Increasing starting salaries, enhancing benefits, utilizing non-traditional or previously untried recruiting practices, and providing additional training and development to existing staff. Globally, of course, the focus is on the last two, which is using non-traditional or previously untried recruiting practices and providing additional training and development to existing staff. And the reason perhaps is some of the data that Shrikant took us through at the start. In a lot of the geographies that we're talking about globally where the talent shortage is very high, particularly countries such as Japan, a lot of the European countries, this is an age factor which is coming in the way. The available talent at the right working age is diminishing by each year, and that is where the challenge begins, and hence organizations are having to look at alternate means. India, on the contrary, does have talent which is in the right age bracket, may or may not have the right capabilities, and if you have them, it's very difficult to retain them. And hence, what organizations are basically trying to do is adopt different approaches by either addressing the career development opportunities or by trying to give them better salaries to keep them intact. Needless to say, it is always a double whammy when you start putting more money on the table. There's always someone else who's putting more money on the table, and you reach and create an inflation situation which is not very good to manage. Finally, coming to the third definition that they had given, which was looking at alternate talent sources. So we asked, what is it that you all are doing when you're looking at alternate talent sources? So considering new offices or buildings or existing facilities, so gone are the days when you would think about getting the talent closer to you. Today, it's about going closer to the talent. So if you look at all these things, you would see how organizations are trying to cater to building proximity to the talent. Wherever the talent is available, we will actually have to go and set up shops. And if you look at what India is doing in particular, you would see adopting talent sourcing to recruit more untapped talent pools. So yeah, we used to hear a lot about diversity. We used to hear a lot about looking at different kinds of workforce, looking at retired talent, looking at various kinds of talent. Today the need is understood and being tried in a variety of ways. It brings us to a very, very important aspect of our entire conversation, which is what is it that HR practitioners need to do to manage this talent shortage. And it's a very, very important one, because the moment we start talking about where does the HR needs to go to manage this talent shortage, particularly in a place like India, it becomes extremely important. So we say our point of view basically on the role of HR is it has to change. Since the needs are changing, the business are ever demanding and business is growing, there is a very important need for the HR to think differently. And quite interestingly, you will see there are 3 key roles that our study puts on the table for HR leaders. It says that the HR leader will have to play 3 distinct but very, very important roles. The number 1 being that of a supply and demand expert. Now, what is a supply and demand expert? Is HR going to actually go and start studying economics? Maybe yes, maybe not. But typically the HR definitely has to ensure that it understands what is the need for my business and where is the talent available. The second requirement is of being a marketer. Today the situation that we are in, it's a very consumer market kind of a situation where the talent is the new consumer whom multiple people are trying to attract. And in that kind of a situation, HR will have to ensure that it is able to market the organization's brand, the organization's value proposition in a much better way. In fact, the employee today is far more savvy and sophisticated. It's akin to a savvy and a sophisticated consumer whom the Apples of the world are actually trying to attract. Hence, in such a situation, the strategies that HR will actually have to adopt will also have to be new age, something that they are actually feeling interested in. And finally, a very, very important role that the HR will need to play is that of a designer. Now, what do we mean when we are saying HR will have to be a designer? HR will actually have to devise, think, be innovative, and create absolutely different work models to drive the real value from the talent that is available. We'll try and understand each of these roles in greater depth in the next few slides. So the first one, which we were talking about, being the quintessential supply and demand experts. So when we talk about HR leaders being the quintessential supply and demand experts, HR will have to become more analytical. It will have to use a lot of market intelligence data that is available to understand where is the business going in the next few years, where is the talent going to be available with those requisite skills in the next few years. It will have to understand internal and external talent supply and how the forces are reshaping the availability of the required skills, which basically means HR can no more be an esoteric system. It will have to be as close as possible to the business, and not just to the current business, but to the business of the future, to basically understand in the next 3 to 5 years what is it that the business is going to need, and then look at it from an external market perspective and say, where can I go and look for them? HR will also have to ensure an absolute alignment between business objectives and workforce capabilities. What do I mean by this? It basically means, and I'm saying alignment, I'm not saying adherence. And then the reason is HR will have to put the challenge on the table. If business is creating demand, if business is creating a plan which is dependent on a certain talent, which the HR can see on the basis of market intelligence and analytics, that it will not be available readily, it needs to put that point on the table. Because it's no point letting the organization create a strategy which it may or may not be able to fulfill, because talent is going to be the one which is going to make the strategy work. If there is a lack of alignment between the business objectives and the workforce capabilities, there will have to be a plan B that the HR will need to put in place. So basically we are saying Indian employers and HR leaders would need to focus on alternate sources for talent. We will have to use analytics and we will have to use market intelligence aggressively and smartly to understand which is the point I need to be, where are those places where that talent is available, and how do I go and tap that potential talent. The whole process of hiring right and selecting right will become extremely important. The process will have to be such that it is able to look at people who are role specific, but considering talent is going to be far and few, it will be important that organizations wear dual hats when they are hiring. They will have to hire for a role and hence take into cognizance the role requirement, but they will also have to ensure that they are hiring for the organization. Because as roles become redundant with changing business needs, the talent should not become redundant. Our ability to move talent from role A to role B will be extremely important, and that will be the key for the organization to succeed. And finally, organization and HR will have to think of retention beyond compensation. So the moment we talk about supply and demand experts, one of the most important elements that HR will actually have to manage is defining career options, looking at what are the career options it can provide on the table, and see where is the talent available which is demanding that kind of career options, and it will actually have to create strategies around that. Now let's look at the next one, which is having to be a marketer for meeting the needs of the organization. Now this is a very, very important one. Like I mentioned, talent is now a savvy and a sophisticated consumer. So typically when you speak to a marketer, the marketeers are constantly doing different things every day to ensure that they are able to meet the consumer need, they are able to be ahead of the competition, they are able to do things differently and address the consumer before the competition. I think that's exactly what HR will need to do. And we all realize there is a lot of segmentation that marketing does when it looks at its consumer behavior so that it's able to take only the right thing to the consumer. HR will also have to do that. It will have to segment and target its own customers, which is the talent today. It will have to create a compelling strategy for a value prop for its new age talent. It will have to pinpoint and market the company's strengths. It will have to ensure that the organization branding, the messaging, and the image of the organization is kept intact, and it is such that it helps in this entire in-demand market. And finally, it will have to move from a one-size-fits-all to a one-size-fits-one strategy. Now, the moment we say a one-size-fits-all to a one-size-fits-one strategy, what do we mean? So earlier, if we thought that the branding could be such that the organization could have a branding and everybody could be catered to through that branding, it will need to change. You would look at different segments of talent, and depending upon what segment of talent you're trying to hire, your branding will have to be catered to them. Going from one segment of talent to the other, the career prospects that you're able to put on the table, the career options that you're able to put on the table will also need to change. The whole career management piece for retention will need to change by each segment of talent within the organization. The whole development process and the growth opportunities that the organization puts on the table from a retention perspective will also need to change for each of the segments. Finally, seeking feedback continuously, and we all know the whole concept of feedback came from marketing, where marketers work aggressively on consumer feedback. I think this is going to be a very, very important element. Working on the engagement data, working closely on the engagement data, and ensuring that you're able to get the right thing on the table for each of the segments. I think the whole data of engagement and the whole process of engagement will need to be relooked. It cannot be at an organization-wide level. It cannot just be at a function level. It will actually have to go to various segments of talent. And the segments of talent may not necessarily mean just the function or the location. It would mean by skills, it would mean by demographics, it would mean by a lot of other aspects. So we are saying the HR leaders will need to focus on a very important element, which is the employer value proposition. What is it that we are offering to the employee? What is it? Why should the employee consider organization A versus organization B? Have we actually defined it, articulated it well enough for the employee to feel attracted? We will have to use new channels, new age channels to hire, engage, and develop employees. And we all keep reading about the Flipkarts of the world as to how they are giving a run for money to all the large retail outlets. One of the most important elements that perhaps they have done is actually get as close as possible to the consumer. If we want to win in this race, we will have to think of absolutely these kind of channels. We will have to think of how we get closer to where my talent actually is. The whole employer-employee relationship will have to be built using new techniques and will have to be highly technologically enabled. Because if we are talking about building the organization for future, technology enablement is only going to increase, and hence any of our age-old practices will actually fall short. Further, the need to attract young talent will become more and more aggravated, and hence the need to actually speak the language that they understand and they appreciate will be important. And finally, what's in it for me at an individual level is something that the organization will have to articulate from a career and from a communication perspective. Now this one is easier said than done, because any organization which has even 100 employees plus, how do you actually define a what's in it for me for each and every employee? That's where using market intelligence, using talent segmentation will become the most important element. Focusing on core and ensuring who my core talent is and how far can I go to keep the talent intact will be a very, very important element. And finally, the third but the most important role that we say is that of HR being the designer. Now this sounds very interesting. What are we saying HR will sit and design? There are three clear aspects that the HR needs to take up when it comes to designing. It will have to design new age people practices. It will have to design new means to get to new talent pools. And it will also have to look at designing new work models. So by this, we basically mean how to structure work to access, mobilize, optimize, and unleash the potential of current and prospective employees will become extremely important. So the moment we say how to structure work, we are saying there will have to be a shift from the job to the outcome. So the moment there is a shift from the job to the outcome, you are no more just thinking about individuals who can be structured for that work. We are talking about a combination of individuals, we are talking about a combination of technology, talent, and a lot of other things put together. And I think the whole work model and people practices will have to be that. We will have to build systems and drive desired outcomes and develop right bench of talent, because if we don't do that, it will become extremely difficult. And finally, the whole model of work being done by an individual will have to shift to communities of people and communities of work. So can you pick up specific skills that need to be met, and can it be given to communities of people who do it? So it's getting more specialized and niche rather than trying to go and get one individual do a thing in your organization. So basically we are saying to succeed, HR leaders will need to focus on designing and developing practices that support the creation of a talent pipeline. It will be extremely important because if we don't have talent pool, we will not be able to meet. It will actually ensure our extinction in the market. Secondly, we'll have to redesign the workforce policies and people and practices for a diverse talent pool. So everybody talks about diversity, but as diverse that we can get in the definition of diversity, that will ensure that we are able to actually win. And I think that's going to be a very, very important element. And finally, HR will have to play a significant role in business partnering. It will have to ensure it creates HR strategy for the business and in such a way that it does not recognize itself or reckon itself as the implementer, but it actually plays an active role to highlight some of these challenges on the table and get the whole business to participate in the entire designing element. And I think when all of this is put together, will the whole role of HR come together. So basically, HR as a designer, HR as a marketer, and most importantly where we started, which is HR being the supply and demand expert. All of these three will need to come in together to get HR manage this talent shortage. So that's it from our side, and we'll go to questions. Tuhina, can you help us with the questions, please?
Thank you, Srikanth and Chaitali, for sharing these interesting insights on the talent shortage trends that we are seeing. We have a couple of questions which have come in, and they seem quite interesting. I'll take them one by one and request either Chaitali or Srikanth to respond. Okay, so the first one which has come in is how can I ensure that the workplace-related competencies are evaluated during the hiring process? I think, Chaitali, could you maybe address this question?
Sure, Tuhina, thanks for this. I hope you all are enjoying this very interesting conversation. So the question is quite interesting. How can I ensure workplace-related competencies are evaluated during the hiring process? It depends what are we defining as workplace-related competencies. In our presentation, we just covered two major aspects, one of them being the soft skills and the other being the hard skills. And I also made a very important point, which was about hiring not just for the role, but hiring for the organization. When we put all these aspects into perspective, it becomes extremely important that when you're hiring an individual, you will need to ensure you look at the fitment of the individual to the organization. you will look at the technical competencies required for the role, and you will look at leadership or behavioral competencies required for the role, as well as the ones that have been prioritized by the organization. And I think all these three elements will need to be given a lot of weightage. The process that we need to adapt to actually measure these competencies would have to be a new age, so that the talent that you're trying to attract should not be driven out of the organization because of the rigor, something which is boring but rigorous in the process. So it will have to be new age, and it will have to be something that the organization and the employees and prospective employees are able to relate to. So maybe a variety of assessment techniques, tools, making the whole interaction very, very interesting, but ensuring the role of HR being the marketeer is kept alive all through the process. So that's it from my side, Tuhina.
Thank you, Chaitali. We have another question, is if I'm looking to recruit a diverse set of talent, what should my hiring process be? Request Shrikant, would you be able to take this up? I think it's quite relevant for you.
Oh, you want me to take this? Yeah, okay, yes. Yeah, fine. Yeah, good. That's a very interesting question, Tuhina. Thank you so much for passing this on to me. What the question, if I have to reiterate the question, it talks about what is the diversified set of talents for the open positions, and how can I get my evaluation process straight to identify the skills, and do I use the different, what are the different processes which I use? In my opinion, when we are hiring a candidate, the experience is not the only deciding criteria. He or she has to be also evaluated on basis of technical competency, leadership skills, soft skills, the right cultural fit for the organization and stuff. We are in the digital world today, we are in the digital world. There are a hunky number of recruiters who are using the social media. The buzzword is social media. Everyone is there in LinkedIn's and Facebook's and Twitter's of the world. So in this digital world, there are many recruiters who use the social media throughout for their hiring processes. Social media is also rapidly being used for businesses, which is by which companies are also focusing to use this as a platform for recruitment for the right people, and also to attract the right talent for some specific jobs. In a nutshell, the networking sites are also used as tools for recruiters and hiring for the right. So today, if I have to sum it up and add some more spines to the question, it's the social media tool which allows the recruiters to reach passive candidates. It also expands the reach, and it also builds the candidate pipeline and directly allows the recruiters to manage the recruiters well. So in my view, these are some of the points which I thought I need to address this, and I hand this back to you, Tuhina.
Thank you, Shrikant. So we have another question which has come in, is how can my talent pipeline building process interlink with the career development and management process? I think there's another related question actually. Should the employee value proposition be defined by leadership, HR, or employees? Chaitali, request if you can take this up.
Sure, Tuhina. Thanks, Siddhant. Both the elements of the question are very, very interesting. So how can I have my talent pipeline building process relate to the career development process? And I think one is subset of the other. I cannot think of building a talent pipeline if there isn't a career development or a career management process which is sitting inside it. Because if I look at the new age talent today and I couple it with the talent shortage situation, the talent that I have in hand is extremely important. And the only way I could actually get this talent to continue in my system is to put on the table opportunities and avenues for them to grow. And that's where not just having a good career development or a career management process, but also keeping it alive, communicating it well enough with the employees, and ensuring that it is an inherent part of building your talent pipeline will become extremely important. And if I go to the second half of the question that you asked, Tuhina, who should define the employer value prop in an organization? Whether it should be leadership, whether it should be HR, or whether it should be employees. And it's very interesting. It gets me to the basic definition of democracy, which is of the people, for the people, by the people. And an employee value proposition is pretty much like that. It is of the employees, for the employees. It should be by the employees. So if it has to be by the employees, the leadership and the HR will have to play a very, very important role of ensuring that they put the boundary conditions on the table. So the leadership will have to put the vision on the table. The HR will have to put the boundary conditions on the table. But it will have to define the promise that it expects the employees to put on the table, and the employees in return will have to put their promise to the organization, and that's how a very successful employee value proposition comes in the organization. So it is basically driven by soliciting feedback from the employees. It is articulated by leadership, taking cognizance of that data, and HR ensures it maintains a fine balance between the promise from the employees and promise from the organization.
Thank you, Chaitali. Okay, so we have one more question, which is what is the role that senior leadership team needs to play to help HR address the talent shortage that we see? Shrikant, could I request you to take this up, please?
Sure, Tuhina. Thank you so much, and I think that's a very interesting question. Though Chaitali had covered elaborately in her presentation in terms of explaining as to how HR needs to be a partner with the senior leadership, let me also opine my views in terms of how HR has to be as a partner with the senior leadership in hiring the right talent for their right jobs. It's not only HR who's solely responsible for addressing the talent and the demand, but as the world of work evolves, there are a lot of avenues, new areas of expertise, which are all required to drive business results today in the organization. There are many challenges, but it requires an avenue for us to have constantly innovate new areas of avenues for us to build the talent. Today, the senior leadership needs to focus on organizational branding, as Chaitali said, messaging, and it has to have the image which can help to address the in-demand skills. We are also talking about addressing the second part of the question. So, we're also talking about the acute talent shortages. What I feel is HR role has to be expanded, and it also includes to attract and retain talent. Leadership, in partnership with HR, has to think differently and shift. This is another famous quote from Chaitali, but I would like to, in the interest of repeating this. So she said that it's not that one-size-fits-all approach to create value propositions, but it has to align with individuals and the organizational objectives too. To sum it up, I would say that the management team must ensure that their organizations should have the right balance to address the skill talent in the changing world of work in achieving their business goals. I'll hand this back to you, Tuhina and Chaitali.
Thank you, Shrikant. We have one more question which is coming from the audience. It is how critical is defining the employee value proposition versus implementing it? And because a lot of organizations do define and develop it, but they fail to implement the same. Chaitali, could I request you to take this up?
Sure, Tuhina, it's a very interesting one. How critical is defining EVP versus implementing EVP? Well, the answer is as simple as how good is a strategy when it is in the book and doesn't get implemented. It's as good or as bad as that. So if you ask me, I think there's no point defining an employee value proposition if you're not able to implement it. Anything that you define needs to be implemented, because every time when you define something as critical as, say, an employee value proposition, you build a lot of hope in your employees. And when you don't implement it, you take them further away from your organization. So I think anything that is just defined has no value. So I would say you absolutely have to ensure you get it done. Having said that, it's not very easy to implement employee value propositions because a lot of things happen in the organization. The people who were involved in the definition change, people who are actually trying to make it happen change, the business dynamics change, and that is where how you define the employee value proposition, the whole process of defining it becomes extremely important. taking a long-term view, ensuring that there are multiple champions for that employee value proposition within the system so that the implementation definitely happens is key to ensuring it gets implemented.
Thank you, Chaitali. We have one more last question that we'd like to take up, which is what should be my best foot forward for my organization while adopting the entirely new business process, or rather when you're setting up a completely new business?
All right. So Tuhina, my understanding of the question is, what should be my best foot forward if my company is adopting an entirely new business model in terms of building the right talent pool for the new business, right? All right. So it's a very, very interesting question, because the moment the organization, is changing its business model, the kind of talent that the organization would need actually changes, right? And I distinctly remember we tried to cover this in our Hypo week when we were actually defining what is the process that the organization needs to follow when it is trying to build talent and the business model itself changes. So does my talent that I have identified and developed over the last few years become redundant? So my answer to this is, typically when you're developing talent, the view has to be that the talent is being developed for the organization and not for the role. And this is a very, very important element that we need to keep in mind. So the moment we talk about developing talent for the organization and not for the role, the whole business model will have an impact, but it will only be temporary. It will not be a permanent end. So if I am identifying 25, 30 people year on year as high potential in my organization, a few of them may actually go down in the list if they were somewhere in the center or at the top, because the choice may have been governed by technical competency, but the talent should not become redundant. And that is where the dynamics of consideration, what is it that we are considering when we are identifying high potential, is extremely important. What is the consideration when we are identifying the right talent pool is very, very important. If it is squarely dependent on technical competencies, the moment business model changes, the business need changes, the talent will become redundant. And hence, looking at leadership competencies, culture alignment, fitment, in addition, and potential for the talent to grow across roles is extremely important.
Thank you, Chaitali. Okay, so we have a couple more questions which we hope to kind of address later on and reach out to you individually. With this, we come to the end of today's webinar. Thank you, Srikanth, and thank you, Chaitali, for sharing the insights from the talent shortage survey with us. For further information, you can always reach out to us and also visit our website, where we do have the white paper shared on the talent shortage survey for 2014 on the Manpower Group website. For any other questions or updates, you can always email us or check out our LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter profiles. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you so much, Tuhina and Chaitali and everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone.